name is Alexia, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Congress of Vienna of 1814-1815. So, the Congress of Vienna was the biggest diplomatic reunion in history. The goal was to settle the situation in Europe after the Napoleon Empire. As you can see on this map, the Empire of Napoleon covered all of actual France, as well as Belgium, the Netherlands, a part of Germany, a part of Italy, and also a part of in the Balkans. And all the green countries were allies of Napoleon, well, at least at first. So really, it overthrew the balance of the European power. So after the war and the abdication in April of Napoleon, the four main victors, which were Russia, Great Britain, Prussia, and Austria, invited European states to a peace conference in Vienna in order to settle the situation and all the unresolved issue that came with the defeat of Napoleon. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to present to you what was the Congress of Vienna and what is its importance in the history of Europe. And to answer these questions, I'm first going to talk about the organization of the Congress, then about France's place in the Congress, which was quite unusual, and the decisions that were made during this Congress. So, first of all, the organization of the Congress. The Congress of Vienna officially began on the 1st of November with the official opening ceremony, but in reality, a lot of delegations arrived as soon as August, and the negotiations began in September 1814. It ended in June 1815 with the signature of the Unique Act. There were around 300 delegations present during this Congress, representing all countries of Europe, from the biggest powers like Russia and Prussia and Great Britain and France, to the little territories like duchies or other small territories, as well as free cities or particular interests of small communities like the Jews of certain cities, of certain territories, and the Holy See, and everyone was invited, so everyone who could come came. The main objectives were first to settle the fate of France after the defeat of Napoleon, also to look about the reorganization of the old Napoleon Empire, as we saw, which covered a big part of Europe, and also to see about the stability and peace of the future European continent. The Congress wasn't really a Congress per se, because there was no plenary session with every delegation present. The main organization was that the four victors and the four delegations of those countries were to discuss the issue and then take into account some remarks from the smaller powers. And around that, there were a lot of festivals of distraction organized to entertain those delegations. So it was really, really an important moment of the history of Europe and of the history of negotiations and treaties. So now I'm going to talk about the place of France in the Congress, because France lost the war, but the French delegation still had a very important place in the negotiations, thanks to its representative, Talleyrand. The four became the five because Talleyrand forced them to accept him as a part of the main powers to discuss the fate of Europe. His arguments were the argument of legitimacy, because that was the main guideline of the Congress, was to respect the legitimacy of powers, of families, of dynasties. And Talleyrand was representing the King Louis XVIII, and the restoration in France after periods of revolution and republics. So he used the legitimacy of the Bourbon bloodline to come and impose himself in the Congress. Also, the power recognized that they had to punish Napoleon for his actions, for the war he waged, but not punish France. Not the people weren't responsible for the wars, Napoleon was. So that was the other argument of Talleyrand. And in the end, he succeeded. He was often the voice of compromise and balance between the ambitions of the four winners, who all were looking to expand their territories and their power. And the result was that France was only reduced to its borders of 1781 at first, and then 1789 after the 100 Days and the return of Napoleon and his second defeat. So as you can see on this map, it's nearly all of actual France, except for a big part in Savoy and other cities that weren't restored to France. But still, that was quite incredible, considering Napoleon was one of the biggest threats in Europe, and the European powers first wanted to punish him, really, and to assure themselves that nothing like this could ever happen again. So now I'm going to finally present to you the decisions made during this Congress. So as we saw, it settled the fate of France, which was just reducing to its borders and not a real punishment. It also created the German Confederations, which was a balance of powers between Prussia and Austria, who were both part of this German Confederation, and it replaced the old Holy Roman Empire, who was dead by this point. The Unique Act also has the Constitution of Switzerland, which is still the constitution that is in place today, and it also guaranteed its neutrality, so which is still the case today. So that was really important. It settled a lot of territorial issues, mainly the question of Poland, because Prussia and Russia both wanted a big part of Poland as a reward for their victory over Napoleon. And so it created the crown of Poland that the Tsar possessed, but as a personal title and not in part of Russia. But in the fact, it was a part of Russia, but officially it was an independent crown. It also settled the situation of Italy, because a lot of Napoleon allies were ruling different territories in Italy. And Napoleon's fate, it was the Congress who first decided to put him on the Isle of Elbe and then exile him in Saint-Hélène after the 100 Days and his second defeat. And most importantly, and surprisingly, the Congress instaured the Holy Alliance, which was an alliance between religious leaders, who were the Tsar for the Orthodox religion, and other religions with Catholicism and other Protestants. And it may seem at first like a religious text that has nothing to do with politics, but a lot of countries ended up being part of this Holy Alliance, and it really helped in the following years to maintain peace and balance on the continent. And at last, it was also one of the first international laws to be created by this Congress, who were the laws on the navigations on rivers, and taxes on those rivers, the abolition of slavery with a delay for certain countries to make the transition between an economy with slavery and an economy with no slavery, and several diplomatic etiquette, which was a big question at the time because it was a really unusual Congress for a period. So, in conclusion, this Congress was really criticized in its time because people thought it wasn't taking into account revolutionary principles or nationalist principles. That's partially true because some principles still stay despite the decisions of the Congress. On the other hand, it ensured a relative stability and peace for the continent for many years after that, as we saw with the Holy Alliance. And in proof of that, the Congress of Vienna was the model with, of course, modernizations for the negotiations of the Treaty of Versailles of 1940 and the end of the First World War, because the situation was quite similar. So we can see why this Congress was really important in the history of Europe. Thank you for listening to me. I'm finished.